I always thought my marriage was solid. Claire and I had been together for 9 years, built a comfortable life, and shared countless memories. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that you never really know someone, not until betrayal stares you in the face. It started with a single sentence. "I'm bored," Claire had said one evening, swirling her wine glass absent-mindedly. "Bored?" I asked, glancing up from my laptop. "Yeah. Nothing ever happens. It's just, the same routine, day in and day out." I frowned. Our life wasn't exactly thrilling, but I thought we were happy. Work, dinner, Netflix, weekends with friends, wasn't that how most marriages went? I wanted to fix it. To shake things up. So, I took a vacation from work and planned a trip to the mountains. Claire loved skiing, and I figured a getaway might rekindle some excitement. She seemed thrilled when I told her. Almost too thrilled. I should have noticed the warning signs then. The way she started texting more often, the sudden need for privacy, the unexplained smiles when she thought I wasn't looking. But love makes you blind, and I, like a fool, was blind as ever. We arrived at the lodge late in the afternoon, the mountain air crisp and fresh. The cabin was perfect, warm, rustic, with a crackling fireplace and a view of the snow-covered slopes. "This is amazing," Claire said, hugging me from behind. I kissed her forehead, relieved. Maybe this was what we needed. That night, we sat by the fire, sipping hot cocoa, watching the flames dance. I held her hand, thinking about how much I loved this woman, how I would do anything to make her happy. I had no idea that, just hours later, my world would shatter. The next morning, Claire woke up early, buzzing with energy. "I'm going to hit the slopes before breakfast," she said, already slipping into her ski gear. I yawned, stretching. "Why don't we go together?" She hesitated. Just for a second. Then she smiled. "I don't want to slow you down, and you always take forever to get ready. I'll meet you at the lodge in a couple of hours, okay?" I shrugged it off. Maybe she just wanted some alone time. After she left, I lingered in bed, listening to the wind whistling through the pines. Something felt off. By the time I reached the slopes, the place was already buzzing with skiers. I searched for Claire but didn't see her. I figured she'd be somewhere on the higher trails. Then, something caught my eye. A man. Familiar. Too familiar. Blake Moore, my best friend since college. Why was he here? He was supposed to be working back home. I watched as he walked toward the ski lift, chatting with someone. Claire. My stomach twisted. She laughed at something he said, playfully nudging his arm. They stood close, closer than friends should. I told myself I was imagining things. But deep down, I knew. The gut feeling, the one I had been ignoring, was screaming now. I skied down, stopping near the lodge, hidden from view. I pulled out my phone and texted Claire. "Me, where are you?" A few seconds later, she replied. "Claire, just finished a run. Heading back now." Lies. I watched as she and Blake disappeared into the trees. And that's when I knew. I wasn't imagining anything. I stood there, gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. My breath came out in short puffs, fogging in the cold air. Claire had just lied to me, without hesitation, without guilt. I had two choices. I could confront her right away or I could wait and gather proof. I chose the latter. For the next hour, I followed them from a distance. They moved like a couple, laughing, touching, their heads tilting toward each other in that intimate way only lovers do. At one point, they took a break near a secluded cabin on the far end of the resort. I watched as they slipped inside, the door closing behind them. I felt sick. I had known Blake for over a decade. He was the best man at our wedding. We had spent countless nights playing poker, watching football, talking about life. He was supposed to have my back. And Claire. She was my wife. The woman I had built my life around. Now, they were inside that cabin together. I needed to know for sure. I skied closer, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The cabin had a side window, slightly frosted over. Carefully, I stepped closer, my breath held tight in my chest. And then I saw it. Claire. Straddling Blake. Their mouths locked together, hands roaming, bodies pressed so closely it made my stomach turn. Rage exploded inside me, white-hot and unforgiving. My vision blurred as I stumbled backward, my boots crunching in the snow. They hadn't even bothered to check if they were alone. They were so lost in their betrayal they didn't even care. I clenched my fists, my entire body trembling. I wanted to storm inside, to make them pay right then and there. But another thought took hold. If I walked in now, they'd just lie. They'd say it was a mistake, a one-time thing, a moment of weakness. No. I needed undeniable proof. So I did the hardest thing I'd ever done. I turned and walked away. Not because I was weak. But because revenge is best served cold. I spent the rest of the day playing the part of an oblivious husband. When Claire finally returned to our cabin, her cheeks were flushed, her eyes bright. "How was skiing?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay light. She smiled, peeling off her gloves. "Amazing. The fresh powder was perfect." Lies. I wanted to grab her, shake her, demand to know how she could do this to me. But I forced myself to stay calm. She walked over and wrapped her arms around my neck. "I missed you," she murmured against my chest. I almost laughed. Instead, I kissed the top of her head. "I missed you too. Two could play this game." That night, as she showered, I retrieved my laptop. My hands trembled as I logged into our home security system. I had installed cameras inside our house months ago, after a break-in down the street. Claire knew about them, or so I thought. But what she didn't know was that I had recently added a new one. A small, motion-activated camera hidden in the corner of our bedroom. If she and Blake had been sneaking around, there was a good chance they hadn't just been meeting in secret. I scrolled through the footage. And there it was. A video from 3 weeks ago. Claire and Blake, in my bed. My stomach twisted as I watched them, their bodies tangled together, whispering, laughing. My best friend. My wife. Bile burned the back of my throat. But I didn't smash the laptop. I didn't scream. Instead, I hit download. I wasn't going to confront her yet. Not here. Not when I didn't have the upper hand. No, I was going to make sure she never saw me coming. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them, Claire and Blake tangled in each other, their laughter mocking me in the darkness. But when morning came, I played my part. "Let's hit the slopes early today," I said over breakfast, pouring Claire a cup of coffee. She looked surprised but pleased. "Really? You usually hate waking up early on vacation." I smiled. I figured we should make the most of it. She reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "I love this version of you." I swallowed the bitterness rising in my throat. After breakfast, we rode the ski lift together. Claire leaned against me, her body warm. "I love you, you know," she murmured. I kissed her forehead, my lips cold. "I know." Lies. 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 We skied together for most of the morning, and for a moment, I almost convinced myself that things were normal. That this was just another trip, just another day with my wife. Then, around noon, Claire got a text. I watched her face change, just for a second. A flicker of something. Guilt? Excitement? "Who's that?" I asked, keeping my voice light. She quickly locked her phone. Oh, just Joy from work. She needs me to check on something later. More lies. But I smiled, nodding. Work never stops, huh? She laughed, relief flooding her face. Tell me about it. I already knew what was coming next. I think I'm gonna take a break, she said after another hour. My legs are killing me. Want me to come with you? She hesitated. No, you keep skiing. I'll just grab a drink at the lodge and rest for a bit. There it was. The moment she thought she was free. Okay, I said, kissing her cheek. I'll meet you later. I watched her disappear down the path toward the lodge, her pace quickening the farther she got from me. The second she was out of sight, I followed. I knew exactly where she was going. And this time, I wasn't just going to watch. This time, I was going to make my presence known. I followed her carefully, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Claire thought she was being slick, but she had no idea I was watching her every move. She walked past the main lodge, past the row of cabins we had rented, and straight toward the secluded trails near the back of the resort. And then I saw him. Blake was already there, standing just outside one of the private rental cabins. He glanced around like a nervous teenager sneaking out after curfew, then quickly stepped inside. Less than 10 seconds later, Claire followed. I clenched my fists so tightly my gloves creaked. This was it. This was all the proof I needed. For a moment, I considered kicking the door in, making a scene. But no, this needed to be smarter. Bigger. I pulled out my phone and started recording. I moved closer, just enough to capture the cabin number, the sign on the door, the unmistakable image of Claire disappearing inside. I heard the murmur of voices, the sound of laughter. Then, the unmistakable sound of a zipper being undone. That was all I needed. I walked up to the door, took a deep breath, and knocked, 3 sharp, deliberate taps. Silence. Then, muffled shuffling. Panicked whispers. A thud. I knocked again, harder this time. Housekeeping, I called out, my voice dripping with mock cheerfulness. Still nothing. Then, just as I was about to knock again, the door cracked open. Claire's face appeared, her expression frozen between shock and terror. She was wrapped in a thin blanket, her hair slightly messy, her cheeks flushed. She blinked at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Honey, I said calmly, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. Aren't you going to invite me in? Behind her, I saw Blake scrambling to pull on his shirt, his face pale as a ghost. I smiled. Checkmate. For a moment, time froze. Claire's face drained of color, her lips parted as if she wanted to speak, but no words came out. Behind her, Blake was yanking his shirt over his head, fumbling like a caught teenager. I took a step forward, pressing against the half-open door. Well? I asked, my voice low and calm. Are you going to let me in, or do I have to invite myself? She swallowed hard. Jason, I didn't wait for her to finish. I pushed the door open and walked in. The air inside was thick with the scent of sweat and perfume. The bed was unmade, the sheets rumpled. Blake's ski jacket was tossed on the chair, and Claire's scarf lay tangled at the foot of the bed. They had been in the middle of it. And they thought they could get away with it. Blake held up his hands, as if that would somehow make this better. Jason, man, listen. I turned to him slowly, feeling my fingers twitch at my sides. No, I said, my voice so steady it almost scared me. You listen. Claire stepped between us, her hands trembling. Please, Jason, this isn't what it looks like. I laughed. Actually laughed. Not what it looks like. I gestured around the room. So what, Claire? You tripped and fell into his arms. Your clothes just happened to fall off. Explain it to me, because I'm dying to hear how you spin this. She clenched her jaw, glancing at Blake like she expected him to say something. But he didn't. He just stood there, shifting from foot to foot like a coward. I let the silence stretch. Let them squirm. Then I pulled out my phone and held it up. I recorded everything, I said, watching the way Claire's face crumbled. Every lie. Every text. Every second of you sneaking off like some lovesick teenager. She reached for my arm. Jason, please. I stepped back, letting the weight of my next words settle in. You destroyed our marriage for this, I said, nodding toward Blake. For a man who didn't even have the guts to come clean. Blake stiffened. Hey, that's not fair. I turned on him so fast he flinched. Shut up. For the first time since I walked in, there was no excuse. No denial. Just cold, hard reality sinking in. Claire's lip trembled. Jason, I love you. I scoffed. No, you don't. You love the thrill. The excitement. You love knowing you're getting away with it. Tears welled in her eyes. It was a mistake. I shook my head. No. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk from the store. A mistake is saying the wrong name in a conversation. This was a choice. Over and over again. Her shoulders shook as she started crying, but I felt nothing. Not anger. Not pain. Just cold, clear resolve. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a small envelope. Claire frowned, blinking away tears. What is that? I tossed it onto the bed between them. Divorce papers, I said. Already signed. Her breath hitched. You knew. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I knew. Blake exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. Jesus, man. You set us up. I turned to him, my smile widening. No, Blake. You set yourself up. He paled. Claire picked up the envelope with shaking hands. Jason, don't do this. Please. I tilted my head. Tell you what, why don't you ask Blake to sign his divorce papers, too? Her expression shattered. Blake choked on his own breath. Wait, what? I took a step toward the door, pausing just long enough to let my final words linger in the air. You didn't think you were the only one keeping secrets, did you? And with that, I walked out, leaving their world to burn. I stepped out into the freezing air, my breath coming fast. The snow crunched beneath my boots as I walked away from the cabin, away from the wreckage of my marriage. But I wasn't done. Not yet. I headed back to our lodge, my mind racing. The divorce papers were just the beginning. Claire and Blake thought they had fooled me, thought they were safe. But they didn't know me as well as they thought. They had no idea what was coming next. I unlocked the cabin door and stepped inside, my hands still shaking, not from fear, not from heartbreak, but from the adrenaline surging through my veins. My duffel bag sat on the chair by the fireplace, right where I had left it. Slowly, deliberately, I unzipped it. Inside, beneath my extra clothes, lay my gun. A .45 caliber pistol, smooth and cold in my hands. I hadn't touched it in years, not since my father passed it down to me. But now, the weight of it felt good. Familiar. I turned it over in my hands, my jaw tightening. Blake had taken everything from me. My wife. My trust. My dignity. And Claire. She had shattered our vows, ripped our life apart like it meant nothing. I thought about what I had seen, her body tangled with his, the way she had looked at him, the way she had lied to my face without hesitation. My fingers curled around the grip. The rage inside me burned hotter than the fire crackling in the fireplace. I could do it. I could walk back to that cabin right now and end this. Blake would never see it coming. Neither would Claire. A part of me, a dark, primal part, wanted to pull the trigger, wanted to see the fear in their eyes when they realized there were consequences to their betrayal. I stood there, gripping the gun, breathing hard. And then, a knock at the door. I froze. Slowly, I set the gun down on the table, covering it with a towel. My heart still thundered as I moved toward the door and pulled it open. Claire. Her face was pale, eyes red from crying. She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, her arms wrapped around herself. "Jason," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Please, don't do this." I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "Do what, Claire?" She swallowed. I don't know. Whatever you're planning. Just, don't." I let out a cold laugh. "Why? Afraid I'll ruin your fun?" Her lower lip trembled. "I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But you're scaring me." I tilted my head, studying her. "Good." She flinched. For the first time since I caught her, I saw real fear in her eyes. Not guilt. Not regret. Just fear. "You didn't love me," I said quietly. "Not really. You loved the version of me that was convenient. The one who trusted you. The one who didn't question where you were when you were late from work. The one who was too blind to see what was right in front of him." She wiped at her eyes. "Jason, please." I held up a hand. "Save it. You made your choice. And now, I'm making mine." Her eyes flickered to the table, where the gun was hidden beneath the towel. She sucked in a sharp breath. "Jason, what are you?" I stepped closer, towering over her. "Get out." She hesitated, her eyes darting between me and the hidden gun. I could see the panic in her expression, the way her mind was racing, trying to figure out if she was safe. Slowly, she backed toward the door. "You need help," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I smiled. "No, Claire. You do." And with that, I shut the door in her face. I stood there, staring at the closed door, listening to Claire's footsteps fade into the snow. My hands were still shaking. I turned back to the table, my eyes landing on the gun beneath the towel. I had never wanted anything more than to make them pay. To make Blake see what betrayal costs. To make Claire feel even a fraction of the pain she had inflicted on me. I reached for the gun. But then, I saw my reflection in the cabin window. A man I didn't recognize stared back. A man consumed by rage, standing on the edge of something he could never take back. And just like that, I knew. Revenge wasn't worth my freedom. It wasn't worth losing myself. I exhaled sharply, grabbed the gun, and locked it back in my duffel bag. They weren't worth it. But that didn't mean they'd get away with it. No, my revenge would be smart. Calculated. And when I was done, they'd wish I had pulled the trigger instead. The next morning, I was gone before Claire woke up. I left the divorce papers on the nightstand with a simple note. "You chose this. Now live with it." I sent the evidence, videos, texts, pictures, to Blake's wife. I made sure she had everything she needed to burn his world down just like he had burned mine. Then, I walked away. No screaming. No violence. No messy courtroom battle. Just silence. Claire called me. Texted. Begged me to talk. I ignored every single word. By the time I returned home, half our friends knew. Within days, everyone did. The whispers started. The judgment. The stares. Blake lost his marriage. His business. His reputation. Claire. She lost me. That was all she ever had that truly mattered. And that was enough. Because sometimes, the best revenge, is letting them destroy themselves. And walking away, without a single scratch.